You is one of Netflix's largest hits and staple shows, and it's soon to be coming to an end with the release of Season 5 next year. While I've put out theories and predictions on what I think could happen to Joe Goldberg and many of the characters that we've been introduced to over the years, I thought that it was about time to see what happened to him in the novels that the show is based on. So with that, let's delve into what happened to Joe at the end of the most recent novel and see if it could provide any similarities to what we could see occur in the show. So let's get into it. Here is what happens to Joe Goldberg in the You novels. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Joe Goldberg is one of the most evil and murderous characters that we've had on our screens for a long while. However, the charming, cunning, and sometimes caring nature of him is something that's tricked many of us into rooting for the individual over the course of the past few years. However, after Season 4 Part 2, it seems as though that has changed. When we look at the three books that make up the series, they're titled You, Hidden Bodies, and You Love Me. It's easy to see that there are similarities between all three books and the story that unfolded within the series. However, it was Season 3 that drifted off from the original narrative of the third book. We all thought that the end of Season 3 was something that was explosive, but in actual fact, the end of the third book was something that one could argue contained more drama than what we saw unfolding on screen. So we could potentially see something like what happened in the novel occur in the final season of the show. Within the novels, we actually saw that Joe ended up getting incarcerated at one point in time. If this was aligning with the TV series, then it would have most likely occurred at the end of Season 2 or early Season 3. Joe Goldberg was arrested for the murder of Beck and Peach. However, there wasn't enough evidence to convict him of the crimes, and Love's family lawyers had the power and skill to be able to get him out. So even though this is something that occurred earlier on in the novels, there's nothing to say that the showrunners couldn't take inspiration from the story which saw Joe behind bars for a period of time, even if it was only a few months. So it is out there on paper, and it could well happen, especially with it tying back to Beck and Peach, and us all knowing that jar of you-know-what is still out there and not tied up. However, in the most recent novel, You Love Me, which was released in 2021, this is where I believe we could see some of what will be unfolding in the final season of the show. At this point in the novels, Love was still alive, and we saw that the show went off into a completely different direction. For context, I'll share what happened to Love. Basically, Joe left Love and his son Henry following getting out of jail, and he decided to go to Washington State, where he met an individual called Mary Kay. Mary essentially became his new You. She was an individual who was married and had a daughter that was in her teenage years. But as we know with Joe, being in a committed relationship and having a pre-existing family doesn't mean much. So there was a lot of time which focused on him being infatuated with Mary and wanting to be with her. However, there was something that he couldn't shake from his head, and this was what Love and the Quinns were all still up to. Something which he spent a lot of his time searching up and stalking from a distance online, rather than in the baseball cap fashion that we've come to get used to in the show. Love ultimately reached out to Joe and arranged to meet him under the pretense of sorting out some kind of arrangement between themselves and their son Henry. However, that wasn't actually the case at all. Love actually planned on killing Joe when they met, similar to what we saw in the show. But what happened in the novel was that she fired a weapon at Joe. It hit him, but he managed to survive. However, Love ultimately turned on herself, believing that Joe was no more. But he managed to survive with injuries that he was able to get through. It's a powerful end to Love, just like what we saw in the show. And considering the showrunners didn't have the source material to work off at this point, they predicted it right. With Mary Kay being somebody that Joe was still infatuated with even after the ordeal that he went through with Love, the novel saw him return to Washington State, and with the announcement of Mary's husband dying, Joe saw that as his opportunity to go in and woo Mary, which he did successfully do, right up to the point of marrying her. However, it wasn't a happy ending for Joe, as Mary's daughter ended up killing her in a moment of rage when she fell down the stairs. So Joe never got his happy ending during the ending of the third novel, despite finding somebody that he was prepared to get married to again. During his time in Washington, he did also have his infamous cage that we're used to seeing him with, and he did lock people up in there and be the catalyst of many people's deaths. I believe that in the new and final season, there's definitely a lot of pre-existing material from the three novels that we haven't seen in the show that we could see unfolding in the final season. Whether that be leaning in on Joe ending up being incarcerated, him meeting another love interest which could be Mary Kay, or the story which could be focused around the arrival of his mother and brother and the impact that it has on his mental state in the present day due to his traumatic past and all that he endured following her leaving him. I think all three of those new ventures could well be interesting. I just wonder where that would leave Cade. Maybe she could take on the love role in the face-off that we saw unfolding. One big thing and something to note is that this third book isn't the final installment in the series of novels, and Caroline Kepnes does have another one on the way that's called For You and Only You, which is coming out very soon. With it being released in April 2023, so literally within only a matter of weeks, the showrunners for the Netflix series will have some new source material to work off of and base the final installment on if they choose to, which is an exciting prospect, as one would imagine that following the death of Mary Kay, Joe will most likely go off and start a new life somewhere, so it will be interesting to see how that will eventually tie into the final installment. It seems as though, judging by the synopsis for the unreleased novel, it bears a similar resemblance to Season 4 of the show, where Joe Goldberg is ready for a change, and he's off to university, but instead of it being in London, he's going to be within a writing fellowship within Harvard University, where he's going to be meeting an individual called Wanda, who becomes his love interest. So I suppose the actual beauty of it is, while there is going to be inspiration for the writers of the Netflix show to take ideas from, the story of Joe Goldberg in its original form hasn't actually come to a close yet, and there are many more things that he can and does still look as though he's going to be doing. So it's going to be interesting to see if the creators of the show, who since Season 3 have ventured off on their own, are going to be able to create an ending for a character that is extremely complex and hasn't even had an ending in the medium that he was created in. I believe that they will do a good job, as the show hasn't fallen short of what it's promised. I just hope that they do take some inspiration from the upcoming novel if it is appropriate to, or if they look at the idea of Joe potentially being incarcerated for his crimes, because I think that would be a fitting end for the character. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen to Joe at the end, and if he gets the ending that's appropriate for him, or the ending that he deserves. So, there you have it, what happened to Joe Goldberg in the You novels. If you want to see more videos such as endings explained, theories and predictions and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What do you think is going to happen to Joe? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.